Hello, my name is Anne. I am Anne of Green Gardens, a YouTube channel that I'm just starting. And what you see behind me is most of my yard. I live in a Zone 6 area in southeastern Pennsylvania that has about a third of an acre of a yard. Most of it's behind me, a little bit in the front. Not too much worth mentioning in the front, but I do plan to start you guys off with a garden tour. And by you guys, I mean literally nobody yet. Hopefully, I'll get people watching soon since this is my first video. I'm gonna try not to be too nerdy, and I'm gonna also try my best to remember the names of plants because that is probably gonna be my downfall in most of these videos, as well as not doing weird stuff with my face or my voice or just saying weird things in general. I hope you enjoy my tour, and I hope I will too, because that's why I'm starting this, is just to have some fun, share my garden, and hopefully inspire somebody to start a garden or weed or, continue on with their garden journey as I continue with mine. You'll be seeing some things that I've put in the last few years, as well as things I'm currently working on. And I probably will also talk endlessly about my future projects that I want to do. And I hope you enjoy the ride. Welcome to my backyard. I'm starting the tour in the not as interesting side, but just to show what I started with when we moved in here about 3 years ago. This area next to the shed had nothing, so I actually kind of dug that out. I added the brick border and I planted these 2 pink rose bushes and these 2 butterfly bushes. And I do also have a few residual pansies left from the early spring, but I do also have this kind of sprawling lavender plant, and this is the second flush. I cut back the first flush probably a little bit late, but I finally got to it and now it's reblooming a little bit. And theoretically I was going to cut off some of these for dried flowers, but these are a little bit too far gone. So I'm just gonna be leaving these for now. Those guys might be okay. And my plan is actually to rip out the rose bushes and butterfly bushes because I have since learned that butterfly bushes can be pretty invasive, and so they're actually not recommended a lot to plant anymore unless you get a variety that is proven to not be invasive. And honestly, the rose bushes are kind of mediocre looking now. They're all right, but they get Japanese beetle damage, they get black spot, they just look terrible during a lot of the year, and it's just time for it to go. I do have big plans to pull this out when things have died back a little bit, and I have some bulbs that I bought that some of them are a little bit more unusual. So some tall Dutch irises, some camassia, which I believe is also called wild hyacinth. I believe it's a native, but don't quote me on that. And then just a few other things, some of those checkered fritillaries. So just, I want to try something different. And then I plan to do something else over the summer. I was kind of thinking of attaching something to the gutter line with strings so I could get some kind of trailing plant that's going to climb up some kind of string or metal thing that I put there. I'm not quite sure at this point. But moving on, this is the front of the house, and it still has some abundant flowers, mostly this salvia, which I purchased as little plugs that had almost no flowers, and some of this Dusty Miller, which I did know from a few years ago lasts well into cold weather. I had no idea how the salvia would do, but it's doing really well. I originally had a sort of a blue purple with a little bit of pink theme, and it looked nice, but this is what has lasted through the whole season and is now, it's mostly just like this purple and silver, which is fine by me. There's a little bit of the bright pink petunia that's left. And I do have a few fairy garden areas which are overgrown, and you can sort of see swing set in there. And I have a little bit over here as well. There is a hidden table and chairs, and I think I will be taking those in for winter just because I did spray paint them this spring. It took me ages and ages, and I just don't feel like redoing this. My mini pumpkin area, I grew this big orange one. The story behind that is some compost I ordered last year had some volunteers in the back, and I just let them go because I had no idea what to expect. I figured it was some kind of pumpkin eventually and started getting pumpkins. This was my only pumpkin though, because I guess, you know, some animals would bite off the little pumpkins, or, you know, I did have some disease, of course. And the vine actually went out about 25 to 30 feet in each direction. So it was a little crazy that I only got one pumpkin from it. And the squirrels have helped themselves to tasting it. And then these other guys I just got at local places. So I don't necessarily need to grow pumpkin again. Maybe, but the squash vine borer was pretty disgusting and all over a lot of my plants this year, so that kind of ruined it a little bit for me. But you know, that's how it goes. You can't control it. Well, only to a certain degree can you control it. This is a gold leaf aucuba. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. It is a Japanese plant, I believe, and it's an evergreen, although it does get some pretty gnarly black stuff on the leaves from deep cold, but it seems to recover really well. And I actually did hack it back quite a bit this year. This one over here gets a little bit more sun, so he was bigger, even though they are shade tolerant, because this is the front of the front of the house faces north. So really only the front seems to get a lot of sunlight later in the summer, and then it's pretty shady back here, which is why I really don't plant anything at all back here. But I actually did dig out my bulbs after they bloomed because it's so shady. The bulbs can't get enough sunlight to really renew their stores of energy. So it was the third spring of them, and they were just getting weird. Some were really small. Mostly the daffodils and the tulips did not do well. But overall, the hyacinths, I have a few crocuses, and then I do have some miniature irises that are very early spring blooming. They are still doing well, so I tried to mark those spots. We'll see if I can find them when I go to plant more bulbs. I'm at the side of the porch, which is right here. Always messy like this, apparently. There were only a few plantings when we moved in. One was this really beautiful peony with a pink flower. I do not know the variety. It's large enough. I'm considering dividing part of it in the early spring to see if I can just move a little bit somewhere else just to spread the beauty around. And this soil actually has quite a bit of stones mixed into it, so it's very hard to dig in. So I usually just do potted plants over here. And then I have some hydrangeas from my mom that she probably propagated these. And they're kind of in just a holding cell for now, because we do plan to, at some point, kind of redo this to screen it in. We need to redo the floor, get electrical work done. That'll be a big project. But moving along, this is an entirely new border that we did in 2020. It was started and mostly completed during pandemic stuff. It would have happened anyway, but it just so happens to look like it was a complete pandemic fueled thing. But I had been planning on doing this type of thing for several years. Right now, this part is kind of just the shade border. These guys are filling in really nicely, just some evergreens. And then I did pilfer some of these hostas from under that crabapple tree over there. And they're going to need dividing next spring because they are pretty enormous and just ridiculous right now. And then I just kind of fill in with some, I usually try to do some kind of fun color theme with annuals. And so far what mostly seems to be left is pink and white and a little bit of yellow from some snapdragons. But the blue lobelia that I had planted ended up dying off a long time ago. It looks fair. It's fairly filled in. And I have a couple azaleas here. This one is a white flower, and this is just like a bright purple. This guy was already replaced because the first one died within its first year or so. And I've slowly been adding in a lot of these guys. You can see that. A hellebore or a Lenten rose. They are shade lovers who they have really early blooms in late winter or early spring, and I haven't had any blooms yet except from one that was already blooming when I planted it. But a friend has a lot of hellebores and she gave me several for my back, so I'm excited to have kind of some hellebore love spread around. And then I just have a few other shrubs planted back here. It's a little hard to see because everything's kind of turning yellow and a little scruffy for the birds. And a few other hydrangeas also from my mother. I believe this middle one is some kind of a lace cap. And these are just the classic, allegedly blue or pink mop heads. But you can see all the blooms that I got this year, which is 0 off of these guys. I don't really understand what's happening. I didn't prune anything besides just a little bit of dead stuff. But you know, maybe I did it wrong. But I've been trying to just leave the hydrangeas alone. And then coming up here, this large bump out of the border, this is kind of my annual cutting flower part of the garden. I do have some perennials. This is a type of bee balm that my friend gave me. It's like a really light pink. It's very pretty and the bees do love it. I have a peony here. I don't remember what color it is. And then in the back, those are my delphiniums, which I've started from seed. And it looks like there is a, what's it called? This is my first downfall. Foxglove, thank you. In the middle there. But my delphiniums are mostly dark blue if I can get it, but I do have some lighter blue and some sort of purples. And anyway, look at this guy. I either need to remember to cut him back or just move him or get rid of him. I believe this is Gara. Very pretty. A lot bigger this year than I thought it would get. It's just very like fluffy looking. It really looks like a grass. Maybe it is, I don't know. I kind of plan to move him to the back eventually, that's going to be more of my perennial native bed. I know he's probably not native, but perennial / native bed. And then I love zinnias. They're one of my favorite flowers. So that is most of what a good chunk of this usually is. Like I said, this is my 3rd season really gardening. So zinnias seem to be my standby for the last several years. But I do love a lot of other things. This Gomphrena was self-seeded, as was this one. Just very, very nice color. And then I have some smaller dahlias here, which I actually started these from seed in the spring. I do a lot of seed starting in my basement with grow lights. And these grew pretty easily, and they actually kind of got like this late flush. I thought they were done, and I actually ripped some out of here. This guy grew back from what I ripped out. I think it's too late for flowering. But man, look at all that color that just appeared. And I have definitely seen a lot of late season bees on it. Nothing's out right now because it is actually drizzling a little bit. So I think most creatures are kind of just staying under cover. Here are a few other things. These are some cone flowers, which I'm leaving these lovely thistle seeds for, if that focuses, focus. Leaving those for the goldfinches and anybody else that wants to eat them. And this is an iris. I believe it's a purple one, but I actually haven't seen it bloom yet. And then back here, I have some random flowering things. That looks like it's going to be an enormous foxglove next year. Like, look at that size. It's huge. So I'm very excited for that and whatever flower stalks may be coming out of that. This is one of my few tuber dahlias that I bought the tuber from and planted. I did not do a very good job attending to things this year with my other dahlias. So even though I bought about 7 or so tubers, I really only have 2 that were successful, which is probably mostly my fault. And that's okay because I can try again next year. Thank you so much for joining me today in the beginning of my garden tour. I am hoping to continue my tour of my vegetable patch as well as my back border, which is a perennial and native area that I worked on this past summer and will continue to work on probably forever because that's how gardens are. And I also am hoping to showcase certain projects that I'm working on to show how I'm doing them and hopefully why, as well as future projects because I have a lot of grass and it doesn't need to all be grass. And I hope that it is way less grass in the future. So thank you so much for joining me. And if you have any questions or kind and gentle comments, I appreciate those. And I hope to post somewhat regularly because the garden journey does last throughout the year. There are other projects with seed starting and indoor plants, and I hope to just show somebody and get them started on their love of gardening and plants. That's my story, and I'm sticking